Have you ever roasted marshmallows by a lake only to have a woman in flip-flops and fury call the cops on you? Because that's exactly what happened to me. It was a calm summer evening. My daughter and I were sitting by our private lake, fire pit crackling, the scent of toasted sugar floating on the breeze. Laughter, warmth, stars above. A perfect moment. Until Karen stormed down the hill. No warning. No hello. Just, that's an open flame. I'm calling the HOA and 911. She lived 3 houses away. Not even part of my cul-de-sac. But that didn't stop her from holding a clipboard like it was a sword. And what started as a peaceful night by the fire ended with a police officer asking me if I had a burn permit for a miniature fire pit on my own property, by my own water. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I just smiled. Because I had a feeling this was more than just a nosy neighbor. I was right. Because what Karen didn't know was that her HOA water line ran right under my easement. And if she wanted to play fire games, I was ready to bring the drought. Let me rewind a bit. Our property, a lakeside home, passed down from my grandfather, is technically outside the new HOA zone. When developers started expanding, they tacked on this master-planned community with a shiny new board and rules galore. But we were grandfathered in. No dues, no votes, no restrictions, which drove Karen absolutely mad. See, Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was the HOA president, self-appointed, re-elected every year, unopposed, mostly because everyone was too afraid or too bored to challenge her. She wore power like cheap perfume, too much, too often, and impossible to ignore. The first time we clashed was over ducks. Yes, ducks. Our lake attracts mallards in spring. My daughter loves to feed them. Karen left a laminated note taped to my mailbox. Do not feed wildlife. It violates HOA sustainability policies. I ignored it. Next week, a warning letter. Then a complaint to the county about unregulated bird feeding. It was funny, until it wasn't. Then came the Marshmallow incident. It was a quiet Tuesday night. Just me, my kid, and a cast-iron fire bowl. We toasted, giggled, and watched frogs hop near the water's edge. Cue Karen, storming down like she was leading a raid on illegal fireworks. This is a fire hazard. I'm calling the police and the HOA. I calmly explained. This was private property, with legal fire clearance. She snapped a photo anyway, then turned to my daughter and said, "It's dangerous for children to be near fire." That crossed a line, but that was just the beginning. Because the very next morning, I got a violation notice, delivered by hand. It said, unapproved fire structures near waterline. Possible fine, $750, I laughed. Until I noticed something else, a note on the bottom in red ink. HOA board will discuss further enforcement options. That wasn't just a warning. That was a threat. I tried to let it go. I really did, but Karen? She made it her personal mission to turn our lakeside home into her own HOA battleground. 3 days after the Marshmallow incident, I came home to find bright orange flags staked along the edge of our lawn. At first, I thought it was a utilities thing. Nope. Karen had ordered a fire hazard assessment on my property without my consent. She claimed that my fire bowl posed a regional wildfire risk. Mind you, the fire bowl is made of stone. There's literally nothing flammable within 10 feet. Still, she reported it to the HOA board and to the county fire marshal. Thankfully, the marshal laughed it off after inspecting it. But Karen wasn't done. That weekend, I noticed something weird. The ducks were gone. Every last one. Then I saw the sign Karen had put up, right by the public path that skirts my property. Warning, avian flu detected. Do not feed or approach waterfowl. There was no flu. Just Karen trying to clear the wildlife with scare tactics. The final straw? She reported me for unauthorized irrigation activity. Now that got my attention. You see, the HOA had recently extended water lines from the main road. Karen and her board approved a plan to tap into a secondary line, one that ran under the old ranch land that included a buried easement through my property. Apparently Karen never checked the deeds. That line ran directly under my tool shed, and the easement contract, still legally mine. I called the county office and confirmed it. I was the sole party authorized to control that specific subsection of the line. And Karen? She was about to learn that in the most inconvenient way possible. But I didn't act immediately. I waited. Why? Because I knew she'd escalate. And boy, did she deliver. Next came the security drone. I kid you not. She sent a drone to monitor compliance around the lakefront. My lakefront. It hovered over my deck like a mechanical mosquito. My daughter cried when it buzzed near her window. When I confronted Karen, she smiled and said, "Just ensuring neighborhood safety." You wouldn't want a repeat of the Marshmallow fiasco, would you? That night, I shut off the water valve to her street. Not the whole HOA, just the loop that served her end of the development. Legally, I was within my rights. The HOA had never secured formal utility rights for that line. I figured they'd notice by morning. They did, at 23 a.m. I was sipping coffee when Karen showed up at my gate, hair wet, robe clinging to her shoulders, fury in her eyes. There's no water. I have a board meeting in 30 minutes. I smiled. That sounds inconvenient. Did you do this? I leaned on the fence, calm as a cloud. It's odd. Must be a utility issue. You should call the county. She did. They sent someone out. The guy looked at the easement marker, checked the maps and said, "Yeah, this whole segment is under private control. Looks like it's his," he pointed to me. Karen's face turned pale. Now the thing about bullies is, they don't back down. They double down. So what did she do? She called a special HOA meeting, just to discuss me. The invitation slipped under my door. Unofficial, passive-aggressive, full of legal jargon, violations of visual conformity standards, unregulated fire use, and potential obstruction of community utilities. I showed up to that meeting with a binder. Inside, photos of her drone invading my property, a notarized easement, agreement from 1982, and a map of the HOA's water, dependency on my land. When she tried to speak, I calmly slid a letter across the table. It was a cease and desist order, drafted by my attorney, filed that morning. Legal, binding. I gave them 72 hours to remove their water line from my property or pay a private easement fee. Her voice cracked. "You can't do this." I just smiled. "You roasted my patience. Now I'm toasting your water rights. You'd think a cease and desist would calm things down. Nope." Karen doubled down. Again, she had her lawyer draft a counter letter, accusing me of intentionally interfering with essential services. She called it malicious utility manipulation. Cute, right? Except she forgot one thing. The easement was airtight. My grandfather's land grant made it explicit. Any utilities crossing our soil without written consent could be revoked with 72 hours notice. So I decided to stop playing defense. It was time for a lesson in power. Step 1. I filed a temporary restriction with the county utility board, barring any unauthorized maintenance or construction on the easement. That meant the HOA couldn't just send in their plumber to dig or reroute the line. They'd need my signature, which of course they weren't going to get. Step 2. I had my contractor friend install a bright red utility lockbox on the main valve with a waterproof placard. Private access only. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Then I put up a motion-detecting trail cam right above it. The next morning, Karen sent her handyman to inspect the line. He took one look at the camera and backed off like he saw a bear trap. That afternoon, the HOA tried sending a letter of demand. It was full of legalese and bluff, claiming eminent domain and threatening to alert the city. I responded with a one-liner. "Let me know when your water rights match your font size." Then came the real chess move. I went to the neighborhood Facebook group and posted, "Hi neighbors, just a friendly heads up. Due to unresolved HOA violations and unauthorized use of my private easement, I've temporarily suspended service to the following streets. I'm happy to discuss reinstatement, but only once the board formally addresses several misconduct issues, including drone surveillance, trespassing, and harassment toward my family." I attached time-stamped drone images, the cease and desist order, and the original 1982 easement clause. That post blew up like a Roman candle. Within 2 hours, 23 comments. By nightfall, over 100. Neighbors were furious, not at me, at her. Turns out, Karen had been nickel and dimming half the community for years, citing bogus violations, charging arbitrary garden fines, and trying to ban backyard hammocks because they lower property values. Someone even posted screenshots of her threatening to report a cancer survivor for having a temporary RV in the driveway. This wasn't a Karen problem anymore. This was a reckoning. 2 nights later, I hosted a lake chat. It wasn't official, just some lawn chairs, lemonade, and an open invite. 26 neighbors showed up. We talked, listened, shared stories. I explained how Karen's board had violated easement law and fabricated violations. And right there, under a string of patio lights, we came up with a plan. A motion to audit the HOA's finances, a petition to vote Karen out as president, and a proposal to dissolve the current board and install a new, accountable structure. But before we moved forward, I did one last thing. I printed a personal letter to Karen, handwritten. No sarcasm, just truth. "Karen, you could have had a neighbor. Instead, you made an enemy. All I wanted was peace by the lake. You brought fire. Now you'll feel the drought." I sealed it and slid it under her door. Inside the envelope, a marshmallow, burnt on one side. That weekend, the petition passed. 72 households signed. Karen tried to challenge the results, but she was outvoted, unanimously. Her final act of desperation? She tried to illegally access the valve one last time. At 2 a.m., she was caught on camera. Wrench in hand, pajamas flapping, cursing under her breath. My trail cam caught it all. I didn't press charges. I just posted the footage, captioned, "Karen's Midnight Plumbing Career Day 1. The video went viral in the community group. Let's just say, the next HOA meeting had record attendance. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, you could feel the shift in the air. No more awkward silences, no more fear, just neighbors, fed up. Karen walked in late, flustered, clutching a folder so full it looked like it was holding her dignity together. Her signature clipboard? Gone. Her usual smirk? Now a tight, nervous twitch. The meeting opened with new business. First motion, immediate removal of Karen B. as HOA president due to misconduct, abuse of power, and failure to disclose conflict of interest. Second motion, audit of HOA finances under Karen's term. Third motion, formal recognition of the easement and a vote to reroute the water line off private land. Each motion, seconded, voted on, passed unanimously. The room broke into quiet applause. Karen tried to speak, her voice trembling. "This is a coordinated attack. It's a witch hunt." I stood, calm, confident, controlled. "No, Karen, this is your consequence." Then I reached into my folder and handed the board a printed report. A water usage breakdown showing how Karen had rerouted HOA lines without consent and inflated community water costs to cover it up. Neighbors gasped. Turns out, she'd been funneling excess water to her backyard greenhouse project. A side hustle she never disclosed. Boom. That was the final crack in her porcelain facade. She stood there, cornered, eyes darting around like someone looking for an exit that didn't exist. And then, the final moment. The new acting president, sweet old Mr. Jenkins from Lot 14, stood up with a quiet authority that cut sharper than any outburst. "Karen, your actions brought shame to this community. You didn't serve, you ruled. And you forgot something important." He pointed at all of us. "We're not your tenants. We're your neighbors." Karen didn't say a word. She turned, clipboard swinging from her trembling hand, and walked out. Someone opened the door for her. It wasn't out of kindness. It was to make sure she left. Later that week, a crew arrived to reroute the HOA water lines, completely off my property. I supervised, smiled, even brought coffee to the workers. They laughed when I told them the story. One guy asked, "You really cut the water off just because of some marshmallows?" I grinned. "Nah, I cut the water off because she lit the wrong fire." Sometimes, the loudest people in the room are just trying to drown out their own guilt. And sometimes, it takes one quiet man with a marshmallow to bring them to silence. After Karen stepped down, things changed around the neighborhood. The lake became peaceful again. Kids started playing outside more. Neighbors began chatting, not whispering. I even got a letter in the mail. No return address. With nothing inside but a single sentence. "Thanks for standing up. We were all just waiting for someone to do it." It still sits on my desk. People ask me all the time, was it really worth it? The drama, the legal stuff, the meetings? And I tell them this, peace is always worth protecting. Even if you have to fight a fire with a little fire of your own. Because this wasn't about a marshmallow. It wasn't even about water. It was about standing up to petty tyrants. The clipboard kings and queens who forget that power isn't given, it's borrowed. And it can be revoked at any time. If you made it to the end of this story, comment below. Justice served. And let me know in the comments. What would you have done if someone called 911 on you for roasting marshmallows? Would you have backed down? Or would you have turned the valve like I did? And hey, if you enjoyed this true tale of poetic justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell so you never miss another HOA meltdown, neighbor showdown, or sweet, cinematic takedown. Because sometimes revenge is a dish best served toasted over a peaceful fire by the lake.